public service demands a lot from us, and that has certainly been my experience leading this agency. I am the first woman confirmed to do so.
With a new administration, Jessica Rosenworcel's going out with grace, and Brendan Carr is coming in like a lion. We have a recap on all of the changes that have taken place over this past week as FCC Today, the podcast, returns after a very long hiatus.
REC, FCC Today, Michi Bradley.
This is FCC Today, the podcast for Sunday, January 26, 2025. On January 20th, with the White House now under control of the Republican Party, FCC Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel has stepped down. During the last 4 years that Rosenworcel was chair, we saw various initiatives from the agency, including the Affordable Connectivity Program, which provided discounted broadband internet service to over 23 million lower-income households, the Nutrition Facts style labels for broadband services that allowed consumers to compare service plans, higher standards for broadband service speeds, and improved broadband availability maps, along with an increase in national broadband availability. Additional initiatives included the U.S. Cyber Trust Mark program, increased disaster status reporting, improvements to 911, 988, and wireless emergency alerting, and efforts to prevent digital discrimination, which assures more availability to more areas, tearing down some of the socioeconomic redlining which has plagued the telecom industry for decades. One of Rosenworcel's biggest achievements was the war on robocalls. This included fortifying the robocall mitigation database and the development of the Stir-Shaken system that reduced the cases of spoofed caller ID. With the inauguration of President Donald Trump and the Republican Party now in control, Brendan Carr has been tapped to be the new chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. In response to a day one executive order from the White House, Carr's FCC has discontinued all FCC initiatives that can be considered as promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. This includes the elimination of DEI from strategic plans, budget action plans, and economic reports. It also means the elimination of the agency's Equity Action Plan, Equity and Diversity Council, and Digital Discrimination Task Force. On Wednesday and Thursday, Chairman Carr had announced leadership changes throughout the many bureaus and offices of the agency. Mark Steffens becomes the new managing director and will head OMD. Aaron Boone will be the new acting chief of the Media Bureau. Like her predecessor, Holly Sorer, Boone will play a dual role as both the acting chief of the bureau as well as senior counsel to the chairman for issues before the media and enforcement bureaus. Boone comes to media from the Wireless Bureau, where she served as deputy chief in the Competition and Infrastructure Policy Division. Boone also has previous experience in the Enforcement Bureau, and prior to joining the agency, she worked at T-Mobile, Clearwire, and Level 3 Communications. Joel Taubenblatt will become the acting chief at the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau. Deborah Jordan, acting chief at the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. Patrick Webry will become the acting chief of the Enforcement Bureau, and Ira Keltz will be the acting chief engineer in the Office of Engineering and Technology. Additional appointments can be found in the January 23 edition of the FCC Daily Digest. In the final days of the Rosenworcel administration, the agency denied 3 complaints filed by the Center for American Rights against the ABC, CBS, and NBC television networks, as well as a 4th complaint filed by the Media and Democracy Project against Fox Television Stations, LLC, licensee of WTXF, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. These cases stemmed around allegations of news distortion, and in the case of NBC, possible violation of the Equal Opportunities Rule arising from the appearance of presidential candidate Kamala Harris and Virginia Senator candidate Tim Kaine on Saturday Night Live.
The American people want to stop the chaos
and end the drama
with a cool new stepmamala. Kick back in our pajamas and watch a rom-kamala.
Like Legally Blondula.
and start decorating for Christmas. Fa la 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 la. Because what do we always say? Keep Kamala and carry on a la.
On the allegations of news distortion, the agency determined no finding of wrongdoing could be made on First Amendment grounds. On the issue of the equal opportunity allegation in regards to NBC, the network provided 2 60-second time slots to candidate Trump following that weekend's NASCAR race and Sunday Night Football.
The left told me to hate Trump. When you cut through the lies, you realize the truth. American families were better when Donald Trump was president. We were safer, wealthier, and stronger.
So if you love this country, if you want to stand up and fight for the future of our nation, you must re-elect Donald J. Trump.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Oh, in case anyone was keeping score, we did run both of those clips for 30 seconds each. In the case of Tim Kaine, the commission stated that the complaint was not valid because it was filed against WNBC in New York, which does not reach Virginia, where Kaine was running. The agency further notes that equal time was given to opponent Hung Kao on Virginia NBC affiliates during the airings of The Voice and an SNL election special. On Wednesday, the FCC issued a series of orders and letters reinstating complaints filed by the Center for American Rights against ABC, CBS, and NBC. In the letters and orders, the FCC stated that the previous decisions were issued prematurely based on an insufficient investigatory record. No such reinstatement was afforded to the complaint against Fox. In response to the reinstatements, Commissioner Ana Gomez said, "We cannot allow our licensing authority to be weaponized to curtail the freedom of the press. The First Amendment is a pillar of the American democracy, and our country needs a press free from interference by regulators. In fact, the Communications Act explicitly prohibits the Commission from censoring broadcasters. We must respect the protections of the First Amendment and the restrictions in the Communications Act."
FCC 101.
In the last story, we discussed the equal opportunity rule. This rule is frequently confused with the fairness doctrine. The fairness doctrine required stations to broadcast editorials on issues of interest to the local community and to invite and air opposing viewpoints made. The fairness doctrine was eliminated in the early 1980s during the Reagan administration. The Equal Opportunities Rule requires station licensees who permit the use of their facilities by any legally qualified candidate for public office to afford an equal opportunity to all other candidates for that same office to use the facilities without censorship. The Equal Opportunity Rule does not apply in situations where the program content is a bona fide newscast, a bona fide news interview, bona fide documentary, or on-the-spot coverage of a bona fide news event. REC recommends that stations that have an on-air talent who declares themselves as a candidate for public office, regardless of that office, whether it's city dog catcher or president of the United States, they should be immediately removed from the air until the conclusion of the election. This rule applies to both full-service and low-power broadcast stations. For more information, see Section 73.1941 of the FCC rules. The Federal Communications Commission is made up of 5 members. Of those 5 members, 3 members represent the political party that is currently in the White House, representing the majority, and the other 2 represent the minority. Chairman Brendan Carr and Nathan Symington currently represent the majority party with 1 vacancy. Jeffrey Starks and Ana Gomez represent the minority party. This past week, President Donald Trump has nominated Olivia Trusty to fill fill the vacant majority seat on the commission. Trusty served as policy director for the Senate Commerce Committee, which has jurisdiction over the FCC. Nominees to the FCC require confirmation by the full Senate, requiring only a simple majority. REC is not aware of any underlying issues with this nomination that would question her qualification to serve. Therefore, we're expecting that Trusty may receive bipartisan support. In addition to the repeal of DEI initiatives in the federal government, President Donald Trump has released several executive orders that will impact operations at federal agencies, including the FCC. Federal workers will be required to come into the office in lieu of telework. A different executive order has put in a hiring freeze on federal government employees, with no known exceptions applying directly to the FCC. The president has also put a freeze on new and proposed federal regulations. Under the order, no rule or proposed rule may be published in the Federal Register until a department or agency head appointed or designated by the president has reviewed and approved the rule. The FCC maintains a list of items on circulation. These are normally decisions that are currently under consideration by the commissioners for a future vote. As of last Friday, the FCC's circulation list has been completely cleared. Of interest to the broadcast service is MB Docket 24-626, which had a notice of proposed rulemaking adopted on December 11, 2024. This NPRM would make miscellaneous changes to the broadcast rules, mainly in respect to the low-power FM service. This proposed rulemaking is likely impacted by the executive order and therefore has not been published in the Federal Register. Until it is published, there is no comment or reply comment period for this item. REC Networks will continue to collect comments from LPFM stakeholders on our positions related to the issues in this proceeding. To participate in this survey, please visit survey.recnet.com. I'm going to take my REC bonnet off for a bit. For those longtime followers, you may have noticed that this is the first podcast that we've had in over 10 months. There's only 24 hours in a day, and I'm only one person, so I don't have the luxury of a staff. During this time, we've been dealing with the aftermath of the LPFM filing window, and even more importantly, my spouse, who is currently dealing with 2 medical conditions. Actually, as I'm recording this, they've been in the hospital since last Thursday, and I've been visiting them daily, which is about a 15-mile drive from Riverton. This explains the so-called family priority days that I've been announcing through various REC channels, why I had to set out the GRC, and why I may be slow to respond to email requests and may not always be there to answer the phone. During this time, I do need to make time to take care of these family issues. I think things will stabilize soon. I am currently planning to attend NAB. It's also important to realize that there is other family here in Riverton, but I am the primary caregiver in this situation. I'm going to do my best to make it to Vegas this April and likely to GRC, depending on the location chosen. I want to thank everyone for their patience, their kind words, and their prayers. I want to get back into the podcast again because the post-LPFM window activities are winding down. And with the recent transition of power in the federal government, the use of our journalistic facilities at REC is more important than ever. REC has used a slogan for a long time: entertain, inform, and support. Information is so important right now, especially considering the uncertainty of what lies ahead. No matter what, I am confident that our family will prevail in these tough times, and likewise, our industry, especially in the LPFM and small station sector, will continue to thrive. We need to make sure that no matter how you get your information, even if it's not from REC, please make sure that you are staying in touch with reliable sources. My current objective for the podcast going forward will be once per week, released on the weekend. This is really the only time that I have to dedicate to any kind of content creation that requires substantial work. A 10-minute podcast can take several hours to write, record, edit, and post. When you don't have a staff of people, it does take a lot of time. But I feel this moral obligation to make sure that all stations, large and small, commercial and non-commercial, secular and faith-based, continue to succeed, and that you have the tools available to help keep the medium of radio relevant in the minds of many. Your donations to REC's efforts are appreciated more than ever. Go to recnet.com, click on the donate button on the bottom left of the browser window. Those donations help offset my expenses for REC's activities and help keep food on the table. Again, thank you. Now let's go out and make some great radio.
Michi Bradley.
FCC Today, the podcast, is available at Podbean and wherever you get your podcasts. We also provide the podcast audio on YouTube. Michelle Bradley. Keep informed with the latest news as it happens at recnet.substack.com. We're on Facebook, on X at RECLPFM, and Blue Sky at rec.lpfm.social. For instant updates, keep a browser locked on fcc.today. For assistance with FM, please call 202-621-2355. FCC Today, the podcast, is a production of REC Networks. I'm Michelle Bradley, SBE Certified Broadcast Technologist. Thank you for listening.